So here I am just going over my supplies that I set out. This is just kind of my workstation. Okay, so I have my tint stuff in the back, the little tint cup, the Reflector-Seal tint. Then I have my curlers. I have been searching for 2 months now for curlers, and I just got those, and they are amazing. They're really flexible for all shapes of eyes. My timer, of course. These are the little plastic pieces that I use. I cut up a Walmart bag or like a Dollar Tree bag. I don't spend money on cling wrap. It takes me a couple minutes just to cut up a bag. And these are my new iPads. They're very, very sticky. Not like the hydrogel that just doesn't do anything. Spoolie brush, a tint brush. Everything I use is disposable, one-time use. Then I get 2 micro swabs, one for the perm, one for the neutralizer. Obviously my step 1, step 2, and my glue to make sure everything is sticky. You use that for your perm rods and for your hair. And I use tweezers. These tweezers are for getting the hair onto the perm rod. So I will talk more about that as we go on, you'll see. And obviously a fan. There was a couple things I forgot to put on the tray. Q-tips, cotton rounds. But we'll see that as the time goes on. I'll just have to wait for my client to get here. Okay. So I got her some before pictures, and she knows that we're going to be recording. And so at this point, I just tell them I'm putting the iPads on. I tell them, look at me. I'm like, look up at me. Okay, so then I put the iPads on, and I'm really just getting as close as I can to that lash line. I'm grabbing the lashes, pulling down a little bit, and making sure that all the lashes are covered so we don't perm them up. Most people want to keep their eyes closed. I just tell them, look up at me. But I have been playing with different iPads, and these are the stickiest. And I don't have anyone complain about pain when I take them off, even though they are really, really sticky. And they have never ripped out an eyelash, so score for these iPads. All right, so I turned the light on, so now you can see things much better. That light just gets too bright for my client, so I don't turn it on until after. So she had really long lashes, and with these new eye molds, I call them molds, I find that I can use the right size for the right lash instead of with the other ones I was using a small only, because those are the only ones that were flexible enough to like go around different eye shapes. But now I can actually choose the right size mold for the right size lash. Before it was really not a choice. It was just based on their eye shape. But now I can actually choose the right size for the right size lash. So obviously if they have really small lashes, you go with the small. If they have really long lashes, you go with the large. If you don't use the right sides, then the ends of the lashes kind of can go off the mold a little bit, off of the hump, and then they can kind of look bent. So you want to always make sure you're using the right size. I heard that too, Bubba. So I prep my molds with the lash glue. Let them get a little sticky. And you can see I stand up so I can get a better view of what's going on. And then I carefully get that mold as close to the lash line as I can. And I'm really not trying to get it sticking perfectly right now. At this point, I'm looking at getting it placed in the right spot. I don't care if it's sticking perfectly yet, because I'm going to come back and I'm going to make sure they're sticking great. And here's a little tweezers that I pull out. I pull these tiny little tweezers out because a lot of times the lashes get stuck on the inner corners, and then the outer corners, like, they'll get stuck underneath the mold. So I just use my tiny little tweezers to pull out those lashes to make sure they're on top of the mold and not hiding underneath. Sometimes I have to, like, pull the lashes from underneath the eye pads too. So I really just pull up the corners and make sure I have every single lash. And what I'm doing now is kind of just using those tweezers and my fingers just to make sure that the inner and the outers are sticking really well, because that's usually where they want to pull up at. Just like a strip lash. When you put your strip lashes on, the edges are always where they want to pull up. And same thing with these perm rods. So that's all I'm doing, is just going back and forth. They keep pulling up, I keep pushing them back down. They keep pulling up, I keep pushing them back down. And then I do this until they stop pulling up, until that glue is, you know, sticking enough to where they don't pull up anymore. This really is the longest part of the entire process, is getting your perm rods on and getting your lashes up and straight. So you can see I'm still poking, still making sure that everything is placed down. See, I keep going from the sides, because the middle always lays down fine. It's always just your ends. So yeah, I'm just still poking, making sure everything is glued down correctly. This is the part that you just really is tedious, and if you take your time on this part, then the rest will come out amazing. So now I'm taking the glue, the same glue that we used to put the rods on your lash, on your lid, is the same glue that we put on top, and I use a generous amount. If you put a thin layer, it's just going to be pointless. You want to really put, I put like a good solid 3 good glops on there. Now here's my tweezers. You see where I'm using my tweezers now. And I'm using my curved bent tweezers. So now I'm just going to take them and I'm going to drag those lashes up onto that glue and get them really soaked into that glue. Now her lashes were naturally slightly curly, so I had a really easy time getting her lashes up. They were healthy, they were a slight curl. She did just take makeup off, mascara off, so that could have helped give them that little bit of a curl. But all I'm doing is just pulling up those lashes, coating them with that glue, and getting them to stick onto that perm rod. And this is where it's also good. I'll turn the tweezers so they're poking down, and that's where you can really get all your lashes straight. But this is the time now when you're going to really take the time to pull every single lash up onto that perm rod and get it coated with glue and get it sticking. I can't express enough to you how important this step is. And you also have to know, these people have their eyes closed. They have no idea what you're doing. So you just have to have the confidence to know that, don't feel rushed. I tell the clients as I'm sitting there, I'll tell them, I'm like, this is the most important part because I have to make sure your lashes are straight. So I just let them know what's happening. But as you see, I'm still working on getting every tiny baby hair up and straight. So I pulled the little tweezers out again, and what I'm doing is I was just pulling out the ends to make sure I had every lash. And then, let's see, there's a couple lashes still poking out. I let that glue get sticky and make sure I have every single lash. The glue will start to get hard, and that's when you'll have to put another layer on. Sometimes I have to put 2 or 3 layers of glue on because the lashes are so like thick and coarse. If they require that much glue and that much effort to get them to go up, then you know you have to leave them on the longest amount of time. So her lashes were pretty healthy. They weren't like blonde and brittle and soft. They were like a medium grade coarseness. So I left her sit on for 9 minutes. And the health of their lashes and the coarseness of their lashes, I'm sorry, that's my dog. The coarseness of their Jackson! The coarseness of their lashes will determine how long, oh my God, these dogs, I'm so sorry. The coarseness of these lashes will determine how long you leave the perm solution on. So if they're blonde and they have really light, soft, fluffy, thin lashes, I leave it on for 8 minutes max. They're the easiest people to over perm. You don't want to ever over process someone's lashes. And then you have people like her, she's like right in the middle where they're not too coarse, they don't take too long to lift, and they don't take too much glue to lift. I leave her on for like 9 minutes, 30 seconds. And then the coarsest ones are usually anyone with an ethnic background, Italians or blacks or sometimes Hispanics have coarse lashes, and they usually need to be left on for the 11-minute mark. And you know those because it takes you forever to get them lifted onto the perm rod. And when I say forever, I mean like 3 coats of glue and they're just not sticking. But so as you can see, I'm a little bit ambidextrous. I can use both hands, which comes in handy when lashing. But if you just hold that perm rod with one finger and then drag your lashes up with your tweezers, and then I just, as the lash pops off, I just push it back up. Pops off, push it back up, pop off, push it back up. That's all I'm doing the whole way across, is just dragging them lashes up over and over and over again until they all stick. And this is one treatment that I actually have no problem with the person talking. Doesn't really cause too much of an issue for me. I don't let people talk when I'm doing extensions, but I have no issues with us talking through this treatment. Some people are really talky and some people just want to lay there and relax. And so I just kind of match their energy. The hardest part, I would say, for these lashes doing this part are always going to be your inner corners, and that's just because they're so small and they're usually very thin. So finding them and getting them to stay on the perm rod is always my challenge, but it's important because if those aren't lifted, it looks silly. So looks like I'm about done here. Probably getting my perm solution ready now. Yep. So I got my little micro brush and I'm sorry, I didn't know my head was in the way, but you can see I kind of put my head while I'm trying to see the lash line. So I only put the perm solution on the very, very root of the lash line. I never put the perm solution, I would say there's 2/3 of the lash that never gets the perm solution on it this way. I only dab with that micro swab I only dab that perm solution on the root of the eyelash. And this is so they can come back month after month and it not be an issue. So now that's my piece of plastic. So you're going to have tiny little baby hairs that you just can't get onto your perm rod. That's what this plastic is going to be for. You want to grab every lash that's not sticking to your perm rod, and you want to make sure that it is now smushed into that perm solution on your perm rod. So I just tell people that's my little handy trick to keep all your baby hairs permed as well. And as you can see, there was a couple hairs that had popped off, so I'm just touching that up before I put the perm solution on. So now it's ready, and I'm so sorry, it's not a good angle for you guys, but the perm solution goes just along the root. And don't get the perm solution on the water line, because then it's going to burn. So this is the key to lifts. The key to lifts is just putting this perm solution on the root of the lash without getting it on the water line and without getting it too high up on the lash to where you fry off the ends. So just along the root. And the micro swabs are going to be your best friend when it comes to that. So I threw that micro swab away right away. I capped my perm solution right away, and then I grabbed my plastic, and I'm going to make sure all her little tiny baby hairs are up, and then I'm going to just stick that plastic. Boom. It sticks by itself. You're just smashing the baby hairs into the perm solution. And then I set my timer for 9 minutes. I actually set my timer for 9 minutes, and I started it after the first eye. So after I'm done with the first eye, I always set my timer and I press the start button. And this is kind of where I tell my client aftercare instructions, and I tell her anything else that she needs to know. I usually tell her, okay, so what you have on now is your perm solution. It's an ammonia-based solution. And then we'll put a neutralizer on it, and that will sit for 8 minutes as well. And then we're going to do the tint, and that's going to sit for 9 minutes as well. And then you'll be done. So mostly from here on out, you'll be waiting. Okay, so the timer went off, and I just take my Q-tip, and I'm just cleaning off all the perm solution. So I take the Q-tip, and then I turn it, and I drag it up, and then I just get all that perm solution off. And this is the only time that perm solution is going to be touching the other part of your hair. And that's okay, because it's allowed to touch the other part of your hair now. And we do want it to touch for a minute or two. So as it's sitting here waiting for us to get the second step ready, that's all those ends need. Any more than that, they'll fry. So just pull the perm solution up and off, and it's okay if it touches your ends at this point, because look, as soon as that's been sitting there for less than a minute, and we're going to put the blue neutralizer on, and then I tell them this should be soothing, this shouldn't be as warm as the last step. This is just going to neutralize everything so the perm solution stops working, and so we don't over process your lashes. And then I usually make some kind of joke, haha, we don't want to do that, that would be horrible. No. So here you want to be generous with the lotion. You want to cover every single part of the lash. The perm solution you only put on the root, but this neutralizer you want to put on everything, and be generous with it, because this is going to stop the perm from working. So you want to make sure that it gets on every surface that perm solution could have gotten on. And then again, if there's any, I only use the plastic here if there's a lot of baby hairs that are sticking up. If there's not a lot, then it's not necessary. So again, you just tap the plastic on, and you tell them to sit for another another 9 minutes. I'm like, okay, another 9 minutes. Yep, and Jaja must have just said that because she got comfortable. So boom, set your timer. And here I just set my timer after both eyes because timing isn't as important as the perm solution here on this one. So I just set my timer for after the fact, and I'm probably going to pause this video in a second. Here's also another great time to talk about anything you would need to talk about here. You could talk about aftercare instructions here instead of before. Alrighty, and we are done. So that was 9 minutes, and now you see I take the plastic off. That mold started acting funny, so I was just fixing it. So now you see I just take the Q-tips and wipe all of the blue stuff away. That one iPad was riding up, so I just had to be careful with that iPad. You see, I immediately throw everything away. I don't put it back on the tray if it's dirty. Everything is very sanitary. That's why I use the tray. I clean and sanitize that tray every day after every client, actually. It usually takes me 3 to 4 Q-tips to clean off both eyes, so I set out 3 or 4 Q-tips. You see, that got thrown in the trash. I immediately get a fresh new one. I'm not mixing, I'm not contaminating. But here, I'm just still very careful to make sure everything is off, because now we're going to do the tint. So we want to get these lashes as dry as possible in this step. So 10 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 drops. No more than that. And that's even a lot, because I always have tons left. So here is your tint. I'm going to try and show you exactly. You just need like a little bit. You want to match the same amount for the same amount. So I'm going to show you how much I use. Couple centimeters. And then I just take it and I smash it all together. Almost like if you ever know about bartending, muddling a drink. You just want to smash those ingredients together until it just looks consistent and not like two separate chemicals. You got to get that oxygen into that tint so it will start working. These little tint cups have been my lifesaver. I got them off Amazon and they are amazing. They're like the little cups that the nail salon uses. They're excellent. So I take my little brush, I take my tint, and I just brush it on like a little tiny artist brush. It's like I just brush it on. I brush it on the ends first. And then I really make sure, this is really important to get, especially for blondes. You have to really get into that same root where you put that perm in. You have to really get into that root line. This is so important for people with blonde hair, because I've tinted people where the actual root is not done and it just looks terrible, and I have to retint. So, and each process takes 10 minutes. So it'll put me 10 minutes behind if I don't get in there right the first time. So again, don't hit the water line, but you need to get into that root really good. And this is really where being a lash artist, this is why we're called it, because I mean, this is really extremely detailed work. So I'm just taking that little tiny brush and just making sure every single hair is coated thoroughly. I've done it where I've, not gotten the inner corners good, and just, you can tell it looks like crap. So I've learned just from experience over the last couple months of, oh my God, I've done at least 100 of these already. All right, so 9 minutes is up, and I take a dry cotton round, and I'm just trying to get as much of that tint off as possible. And I tell them, under no circumstances will you open up your eye right now. So I just get as much of the dry, as much of the wet off as I can, get the perm rod off, and then I take another dry one and get as much of that tint residue off as I can. Again, same thing with the other eye, get as much of the tint residue off as I can. Take the mold off, plop that into my barbicide. Again, I'm just getting all the wet dye off. Then I'm going to take off the eye pads. She had just washed her face, so they stuck really, really good. Again, you want to tell them, please do not open your eye, it will burn. And then that's it. I took the micellar water.
Just take a couple of photos.
And I take a cotton round with micellar water, and then I just wipe everything down, and then I just dry her lashes, and then I take a bunch of pictures.